If you're looking to learn about CSS animations through building a project, this video is for you. We're going to be building this Ferris wheel, okay? And we're going to learn all about keyframes, animation names, animation durations, and much more, so that by the end, you'll be a master in these techniques. So this video is perfect for all you beginner developers out there learning HTML and CSS. And if you are perhaps looking to build out something more advanced and don't have the backend knowledge to do so and want to build something like this that handles all your business needs, then Odoo might be the answer for you. Whether it's adding shopping capabilities, website translations, or implementing live chats, you can try Odoo for free by visiting the URL in the description below. So go ahead and click that out and checking the service you need just like this. Make sure to pick your favorite theme and then voila, here it is. And of course you can replace things such as images or the text on here super simply, just like so, as well as implement shopping functionality. Okay? This just means that you can also check out the reporting, such as analytics, where you can see all of this information, such as goal conversions and locations that your users signed in from, as well as pages that are visited the most. And of course, you can also set up payment methods with PayPal or Stripe or others. And next, you can create products, build the checkout experience, and manage your inventory all in one roof. Okay, so do check that out if you want to. Otherwise, let's continue with learning about animations in CSS. Okay, so let's first create a project. I'm going to create an empty project. I'm actually going to call this CSS Ferris wheel, and I'm just going to click create, and I'm going to open it up. So at the moment, you will see there's nothing in here. I'm just going to go ahead and create a new file. I'm going to create an index HTML file to get started. So we could just put index if you're using WebStorm, and that will work. And we'll add the .html extension so that we know that we are working with an HTML file. And also our code editors know to treat it as an HTML file. Okay? So great, that's one file in here, one file in the project, CSS Ferris wheel. And here is the boilerplate code. I'm gonna walk you through this a little bit. If you haven't got this, please write it. If you're using a different code editor that didn't bring this up, we're gonna have the doc type declaration, and we're gonna also have the HTML element in here, which holds these two children. Okay, so the head element and the body element. The head element is where we're going to store all our metadata, and it's going to have the char set, which essentially allow us to view, you know, not just letters, but icons as well. So that is something that you can have. And then we'll also have the title here, in which we're going to put Ferris wheel, just like so. Okay, great. The third thing we're also going to do is put in a link element, and we're going to put in rel style sheet. Okay, so there we go, as well as the reference to our style sheet, which we don't yet have. So I'm just going to get rid of that, and let's add our style sheet. So I'm going to add a new style sheet CSS file, and I'm going to just call this styles plural. Okay, so that's just added a CSS file. It's got the .css extension so that our code editors know to treat this as a CSS file. And now we just link it up. And as it's in the same place as our index HTML file, I'm just going to name the file name, because we don't need to go into any folders or anything like that. So that's what I have done. Okay, great. So now if we were to open this up in WebStorm, I can just click here and it will essentially bring up this project. Or if you're not using WebStorm, you can, on the index.html file, just get the path, copy the absolute path, and paste it in like so. So both ways will work. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and inspect this page by clicking on here so that this shows up and we can see all the elements we're working with. Now, we put in the title of Ferris wheel, but it's not showing up in the browser. That's because that actually shows up in the tab, and you will see it show up here, Ferris wheel, okay? Because we put that title in the head. This is all the metadata that we have here. Great. So let's continue. Now that we have all the metadata done, let's actually put in some elements that are visible. And for that, I'm just going to actually add a div. So a div like so within the body element, and I'm just going to give this the class name of wheel so we can pick it out in our CSS file. In here as well, I'm just going to add a new div, 6 span elements, so one like so. Let's also give this the class of line, and I'm just going to copy this out and paste it 6 times. And now let's also, like I said, create a div, and I'm going to give this the class of cabin, just like so. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, great. So that's what you need to do. Let's continue. So now let's pick these out. I'm just going to minimize that, and let's pick out some of these things. I'm going to pick out the div with a class of wheel first. So there we go. Let's pick it out. Dot means we are looking for a class name. So we're looking for something with the class name of wheel. And we're going to set the border of this to be 2 pixels solid black. And then let's also give it a border radius. So I'm going to give it a border radius. It's going to be 50% because essentially we want to make the wheel a circle, right? And I'm just going to give it a margin left, space it out from the left of 50 pixels. Great. We are also going to give this a position of absolute so that we can essentially position stuff inside of here with the position property, as well as set the height of this and the width both to be 55 viewport width and also for the height. So both of those have the same value right there. So if we look in here now, that should create a circle for us. This is looking good. I'm just going to also give this a max property because at the moment this will scale like so, but we want it to stop after a certain time, which is why I'm going to give it a max height of 500 pixels and the same for the max width. So max width 500 pixels. Next, let's also pick out all the elements with the class name of line. And for this, I'm going to just set a background color. This is going to be black. Let's give it a width of 50% and a height of 2 pixels. We'll also give this a position, this time also of absolute. And we'll space it out from the left 50% and from the top 50%. Okay, so now all of the lines essentially will be in the same space. They'll be here. Okay, that's all 6 of them. Let's continue. We're also going to have to rotate some of these, right? Because like I said, they're all in one place at the moment. And for that, we're going to use transform, but also actually going to use transform origin to set the origin of where we want to rotate each of these from. So if we go ahead and do 0% on the left and 0% from the top, it will essentially set it to the top left corner of the element. Great. We don't actually need these, but for it to pass on FreeCodeCamp, I do believe you need to keep those in, so just keep it like that for passing the test. Now let's actually pick out the elements, you know, by the first, second, third, and fourth element and so on. And in order to do that, we're going to have to target. Let's target the second element with the class name of line first, so we can rotate it by 60 degrees. So we're going to grab the element, essentially all the elements with a class name of line at the moment. However, if we go nth of type 2, we'll literally grab the second element. Okay, so if we look in here, we're going to grab this one right here. That's what we are targeting with this line of code. And this time we're going to rotate. Okay, we're going to use transform rotate 60 degrees. So now the second line will be rotated. So I think let's do the rest, right? So let's do it. I'm going to just copy this and do nth of line 3, and this time 120 degrees. Nth time 4, let's add another 60, so 180. Let's do 5. And this is going to be 240, and one more, 6, is going to be 300. Okay, so if we now save that and look in here, We've done it. We've rotated all of those shapes and we've done it from the origin right here. Next, we're going to pick out everything with the class name of cabin. So once again, pick out the cabin, and this time I'm just going to set the background color. I'm going to set it to be red. Let's also set the width. I'm going to set the width to be 20% and the height to be 20% also. Okay, great. So once again, that we've applied to essentially all of these, all 6 of the elements with the class name of cabin. And once again, I'm just going to give it a position of, that's right, absolute. Let's also give it a border of 2 pixels solid. Okay, and by default, that border is black. This is looking great. Now let's move to positioning. So first off, once again, let's set the transform origin. So I'm going to do transform origin and just set it to be 50% left and 0% top, placing it in the middle of the top edge of the element. Great. Now it's time to position the cabins around the wheel, just like we did with the lines. So once again, I'm going to grab the first cabin nth of type 1, and I'm going to set the right property to be minus 8.5% and the top to be 50%, just like that. Okay, so it should show up there. Wonderful. Let's do the same for the others. So this time nth of type 2, and then we're going to set this to be 17%, and from the top it's going to be 93.5. And then let's do the next one. So this time it's going to be 3. Right value, we're going to put 67 and keep that like so. Then let's go with 4. We'll do minus 8.5 and then back to 50. And then 5 is going to have 17 and have this as 7. And then this one will be 6, 17, and also 7. Great. Now, actually, this one should be left instead. This one should also be left, and I think that's okay. So there we are. That's what it looks like at the moment. Great. Okay, so we've worked with picking out certain elements when there's more than one. Next, I'm going to use keyframes. The keyframe is essentially used to define the flow of a CSS animation. And within the keyframes rule, you can essentially create selectors for specific points in the animation sequence, such as 0% or 25%, or use the from and to essentially define the start and end of the sequence. Now, the keyframe rules essentially require a name to be assigned to them. So, for example, just like functions, we're going to have to name the keyframe. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. So we're going to do at keyframes, and we're going to have to name it like I said. I'm going to name this rule wheel. Okay? And now we're going to have to define the start of the animation with either 0% or from, and the end of the animation. So as you can kind of see here. So let's start at the start of the animation. So I'm going to start with 0%. And what I'm going to do is essentially write my rule for 0% here. And at 0, I'm going to transform, rotate. I'm going to start with 0 degrees. And this will essentially start the animation with no rotation. Now let's define the end. So 100% would be the end of the animation. And the rule I'm going to write for this is transform rotate 360. So by doing this, a full rotation will occur. Now let's actually implement this, right? So we've defined the keyframe, we gave it a name, and now where do we want to apply this animation? Well, I actually want to apply it to the element with the class name of wheel. And in order to do this, I need to add the animation name here, and it's wheel, right? Because that's what we called it all the way at the bottom. That's what we called our keyframe. And I'm also going to set the animation duration. And I'm going to set this, you can use seconds or milliseconds. I'm going to go ahead and use seconds here and say that I want this to run for 10 seconds. So if you save this now and hit refresh, amazing. A full rotation should be done on the element with the class name of wheel, so this one, in 10 seconds. Okay, and it did. It completed it. If I do that again and you count to 10, this should complete a full circle in 10 seconds and essentially stop because we haven't told it to do anything else. Great. So once again, we did that by adding the keyframe here, thanks to the animation name property, and then also defining how long we want to run that animation for. We can also use something like animation iteration count, and that will essentially just tell our code how many times we want the animation to repeat, or you can set it to infinite. Okay, so you can do it so it literally like runs continually, infinitely, or forever. Another thing we can do is use animation timing function, and this actually will set how the animation should progress over time. Now we are actually going to use linear. There are a few others to use, but we essentially want it to run smoothly over time, meaning that the animation will run at the same rate from start to finish. So if you go ahead and add those and have a look in here, this should now rotate in a linear way, so from the same time, from start to finish, infinitely. Okay? So that is looking cool. Let's continue. Okay, so now that you've got the hang of that, let's create another one, right? So let's just repeat what we learned. So we're going to add another keyframe, so another animation now, this time to each of the little red cabins. So let's do it. So first off, what do? Well, we use keyframes to define a keyframe or an animation. Let's go ahead and call this cabins. Now, once again, we need to define what happens at the start, so it's 0%, and then also what happens at the end, so when it reaches 100%. And this time, I'm going to also use transform on each of the cabins, and yes, rotate, but this time I'm going to rotate, let's start with 0 degrees, and let's have it end with minus 360 degrees. Okay, so that's our animation for each of the red cabins. So now that we've made this, let's actually put it somewhere, and I want this to animate each of the cabins as I said. So let's go ahead and put it here, animation name cabins, and this time what I'm going to do is actually, instead of write each one out, a shorthand for this. So instead of getting the, the name, the iteration count, and the function, we can just do this on one line. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to write animation. We'll get the animation name. We'll set the animation duration. I'm going to set it to be 10 seconds. We can also set the animation timing function here. So I'm going to use linear. And I'm also going to say that I want the iteration count to be infinite. So there we go. That's a shorthand for writing the animation. So now it should look like that. Pretty cool. Let's continue. So we've had a look at linear. However, if I want to give the cabins more of like a natural swing, I can use the ease in out timing function. So this will essentially start and end the animation at a slower pace and then kind of move more quickly in the middle. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. Okay, you'll see that each of these are kind of moving a bit faster in the middle of the animation and then slowing down. So that's what ease in out will do. I think it looks a little bit more natural. So pretty cool, right? You can do a bunch more stuff. So for example, rotating is not all you can do. You can also actually even change the background color. So if I go ahead and change the background color here, so background color, let's say to be yellow on the 0% animation of the cabin, you will see that color essentially change, okay? and it will change and it'll become red when it completes and then turn back to yellow, okay? Doesn't ease in or out because we are literally just saying from 100 to 0, it should go from red, which was the original cabin color, back to yellow. If we wanted to mix this up even more, I can apply one at 50% of the animation and change the background color to be purple, for example. So that is another thing we can do, okay? I'm going to show you what this looks like. So there we go. And if we refresh, that's going from yellow to purple halfway in the animation and then ends on red. And then we'll quickly flip back to yellow like so. Great. Now, if we want to remove this jerkiness, because the animation is on an infinite loop and the start and end colors are not the same, what we can do is just remove this background color from here so that, you know, it always ends and starts at the same color, and then it essentially just won't be so jerky. And instead, at 25%, I'm just going to add that background color. Okay, so just make sure that whatever you start on and end is the same to kind of get rid of any jerky behavior. I'm just going to go ahead and do the same for here too. So just make that yellow as well. And great. And wonderful, we've done it. We've learned about CSS animations while building out this fun, super simple Ferris wheel. Okay, so to recap, today we learned about keyframes. We also learned about animation timing functions, as well as animation durations, animation iteration counts, and much more. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.